Oh, there's Rick. You can see with that front shires.
So this is Peter Morris. We're at Slimbridge at the Wildfire and Wetlands Centre here, and Peter works here. So yeah, here we are. Peter, what do you think about this amazing news yesterday then?
I'm not actually surprised by it because, from what I understand, the prospects for fracking operations in the Severn Estuary weren't that high anyway. It's an explorative licence in the first place. But this is one of 10 wetland centres and reserves we've got around the country, and other ones are in areas where there is already exploratory work going on, and that does give us quite a bit of concern.
Yeah, so I mean, we're thinking of it down here that the battle might be won, but the war is certainly still going on, and it's happening elsewhere, so we have to be vigilant. Yeah?
It is. I mean, from our point of view, we need energy. We need to find ways to do it. So it's not a straight let's not look at anything. The precautionary principle doesn't overtake everything. But the report I'm holding is a joint report with several other NGOs where we looked at it closely, and there's some high bars that need to be got over in order to go ahead here. It's a hell of a lot of water that you need, pressurised underground, a lot of chemicals that go into it, and then it's got to come back out again. We're to do with wetlands, and wetlands are fed by water, so the worry, are they manage to get all that water back without pollutants getting into wetlands? You've got to understand water tables, how they go up and down. For the coastal exploratory licences, the tides bring water back and forth. There's a lot there that you think, we don't know, I'm sure they don't know, and that's the worry.
That is a worry, I quite agree. There are so many stories worldwide now of water contamination. It's not an isolated case anymore. There's people's children getting sick, their farm animals getting sick, and you know that case of just lighting the tap, which seemed to be a bit of a gimmick, but now it's happening to so many places that how can we trust this? Water travels anyway, doesn't it?
It does, and also there is the moratorium on drilling directly in places like SPAs and SACs. So these are the European protected areas that are the most protected areas in the country. But a few feet to the side, there's a small buffer zone, but a few feet beyond the buffer zone, you can drill there and then go underneath, which that's a worry in itself. But also, the Severn Estuary itself is a protected area, but 100 miles upstream, if there's work going on around the catchment there, the wider catchment, then there's water that's going to actually come to the surface further down the catchment. It's back to water, travels in mysterious ways, if you like. And how can you predict all of that?
Yeah, how can you?
Thank you, and best of luck. This is absolutely bonkers, which is what makes it brilliant. So best of luck to you in getting your message across.
Thanks a lot, Peter. Thanks.
If you don't know anything about fracking, please pick up one of these leaflets here. Why are we protesting outside Barclays? Because Barclays have a 97% stake in a company that has just received approval of a fracking application in Yorkshire. It is under dispute, and we hope it does not go through. Why do we hope this? Because fracking is unhealthy, it is dangerous to our environment, it is economically insane, and where it has taken place in America and Australia and other parts of the world, it has consistently damaged lives, health, communities and landscapes. It's a form of drilling. It's a form of drilling where for oil or gas, which involves drilling down and then along and using high pressure water and chemicals to fracture the substrate, to fracture the rock and to extract gas. But it has an awful record of contamination of water, contamination of air, and detrimental effects to communities where it happens. Even in Texas, where this particular technique was born, the very town where it was born has now banned it. And there are several countries around the world, as well as various parts of America and Australia, who have banned this practice. In Europe, France has banned it, and Bulgaria has banned it. Germany has banned it. So there are lots of places that have realised that fracking is not the way forward. Please come and take a leaflet if you do not know much about fracking. So we don't want Barclays to support it. If you are a Barclays customer, we strongly encourage you to make this statement to them and to tell them to divest from their companies that are wanting to frack. We'd also like to celebrate today because just yesterday we heard that the company which had a licence to frack in Gloucestershire, in the Forest of Dean, has now withdrawn their intention to do so in the forest, citing, at least in part, public I would love to invite Owen from Frack Off Our Forest, who's here with us today, to say a few words, and after that I would also like to hand to Gandalf for a few words. So Owen first.
So although we've won this battle, we don't think we've won the war yet. We're also in solidarity. We want to stop fracking everywhere, not just in our backyards. We're not NIMBYs, we're out to defeat it everywhere. In Gloucestershire, we want our county council to develop policies that will stop fracking from happening in the future. We also want to put pressure on the Environment Agency and other authorities that we're all primed to let the frackers in. So I think that's probably all I've got to say. Jojo really helped with her social surveys. We found that 85% of residents and villages were opposed to fracking, and that has great weight if you can prove that they have no social licence.
Owen was referring to the kind of surveys that the Lock the Gate movement in Australia was based on, where we've got Meg actually from Australia over there waving her arms.
My name's Meg Nielson. I'm from Australia. I'm from a little place called Bentley in the Northern Rivers district of New South Wales. We had a very good success with defeating the gas monster, the unconventional gas. We had a gas company who wanted to put in 1,000 wells across our beautiful farming valley, across the green rolling hills of northern New South Wales. Fortunately, we have a very good community of really caring people, and we did community surveys right across the area. We have 147 communities across the Northern Rivers district of New South Wales who have declared themselves gas field free and who have made it clear that we don't want any unconventional gas wells in our district. So I think I mentioned the company were looking to put in 1,000 gas wells over the valleys, and it was such a shock. We had a wonderful situation where farmers and environmentalists and shopkeepers and tradies and everything all banded together, and we managed to raise crowds of between 3,000 and 7,000 people. And the government the New South Wales government tried to clamp down on us. They tried to intimidate us. They said they were going to put in between 800 and 900 riot squad police, and they were trying to make us back down. Even the police association were on our side. A lot of the families of the police actually lived in the area, and they said no as well. So we were very fortunate. The police said to the government there are going to be fatalities, we're going to have casualties. We worked quite closely with the government and the bureaucrats in Parliament House, and we managed to get first of all, the government suspended the licence to drill, and then they negotiated with the company Magasco and bought back the licence, and the Northern Rivers was free. But of course, it's not just about the Northern Rivers. It's not just about New South Wales. It's not just about Australia. It's about the earth, isn't it? It's about the world. We've discovered through talking to toxicologists and scientists that the methane that is released with fugitive emissions from these gas wells, every well that's ever been drilled actually is leaking fugitive emissions of methane, and methane is about 90 times more potent a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So you've got an awful situation where an already stressed earth climate is the situation is being exacerbated by these gas wells leaking. So we really need to all stick together. We need communities to stick together, and people come out and just say to the government, no, we don't want this, we don't need it. Wind and solar power is so reasonably priced now and so efficient now. We don't need gas and we don't need coal. Electricity grids can be powered using solar power and wind power, wave power. Countries like the UK, which is an island, and as is my own island, Australia, wave power is magically efficient, as is solar and wind. Why do we need to be digging up our precious earth, polluting our precious atmosphere? There's only one answer: because we need to appease the fossil fuel companies, the coal and gas companies. And we need to get our governments to stop accepting political donations from these companies. And then we will have a level playing field where renewable energies can compete against these horribly dirty, polluting industries.
Now, you're here in England. Are you visiting or are you staying? Or?
I'm visiting.
You're a very welcome visitor, I might add.
Thank you, bless your heart.
Well, thank you for your support and coming out and speaking out for us.
I love England. It's my mother country, and I'm very proud to be here. And if I can do the teeniest little thing to help with your campaign, it's an honour. And I'm so proud of everything that you're all doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's Gandalf.
Thanks, Jojo. Thanks, Owen. Thanks for all the great work they've done on this campaign. Amazing work. They're the guys who really do the work. You know, anybody can put on a wizard's hat and pose for a few pictures. But behind the scenes, you know, when you're scrolling through planning applications and going through councillors' phone numbers and stuff, you know, that's the real work that happens. So thanks to them, they've done it. And, anyway, all that glitters is not gold. All who wander are not lost. Those are lines from The Lord of the Rings. And so, yeah, my own sort of personal quest is happening. I'm on the way from Hereford to Downing Street, and I'm going to deliver a ring, or not me, my grandchildren and children of friends of mine who are going to be impacted by all the environmental decisions that we're making as a government of the country right now. They're going to post this, hopefully this ring, this amazing ring, through the letterbox of 10 Downing Street, the cracks of Mount Doom. That's the idea. And this is just an ordinary, basic iron ring, which we found up in the hills in Herefordshire. It used to pull a trailer from a tractor. It's got real power, yeah, and it's got, it's useful, unlike the people in Westminster who have power, but maybe it's not so real. And it's also very ordinary. It's an ordinary iron ring. So just like us, we're just ordinary people doing a fun thing. So thank you all for supporting it and supporting the quest. Please follow us on Don't Frack the Shire's Facebook page.
I think it's worth highlighting what this government is doing in relation to fracking. it is supporting it, but it isn't. It is supporting it not for any concrete reason whatsoever. And this became very clear at the beginning of this year when a letter was leaked, been sent from DEFRA, from the Communities and Local Government Department, and from the Climate Change Department, which now no longer exists, to the Chancellor last summer, shortly after the Lancashire fracking application was turned down. Now, this government is clearly intending to support fracking no matter what the public wants, no matter what the evidence of harm is. And I'm just going to read you a couple of small bits from that letter that just explain what the attitude is. We need to focus on developing a clear and persuasive narrative which demonstrates why the potential that shale represents is so important to our future energy security. The development and implementation of an ambitious cross-government programme of communications and outreach to influence key opinion formers, decision makers and civic leaders, including media opportunities for ministers, a suite of information and materials for the public. So this is basically a PR agenda. This is not a let's tell them how wonderful it is and give them all this evidence. This is how do we persuade the public? This is the reason that we produce these information leaflets. This is the reason that the public are having to motivate themselves and communities are having to inform each other, because the mainstream media are not giving us the true picture. They are giving us the government spin, which very clearly was laid out. This is what we are doing. This is a PR job. To the extent that they also need to adjust, apparently, the usability and integrity of the regulatory systems, including the planning system. In other words, if you don't want it, we're going to change the planning regulations so that you're going to get it anyway. And this is what happened. It was about this time last year, and it's those new regulations that have allowed the fracking application in North Yorkshire to be accepted. This industry has no legitimacy. When a planning committee is told that experience from elsewhere is not relevant to the present application, you know you are dealing with insanity. How else does anybody learn anything but from experience of others and experience that has happened elsewhere? When a planning committee is told to actively ignore that, then there is definitely something very, very dodgy going on. So let us be clear. We are having the wool pulled over our eyes in the mainstream media. You will not see images like these which show the devastation that fracking does to a landscape. You will not be shown these in the mainstream media. The government like to give the impression that when there's a fracking application being considered, it's one little well tucked away in the country, nobody's going to notice, and we're just exploring anyway. Every big fracking field starts with one well, and to produce any kind of quantity of usable gas, it needs hundreds of wells. When they did fracking, when they bore fracking wells, the industry itself admits that 6% or more of these wells will fail quickly, and over time this can go up to 20% or higher. Now, if you have a fracking field full of hundreds of gas wells, that is a guaranteed contamination risk. So the attitude that we have in this country, that the government has in this country, talks about mitigating risks. It doesn't talk about looking at the overall danger, the harm that has been shown to result from fracking. Now, I thought we could just do a little celebratory song to the tune of, this is to the tune of For He's a Jolly Good Fellow, okay? And it goes, the frackers have left the forest, the frackers have left the forest, the frackers have left the forest, and they're not coming back. Are you ready? The frackers have left the forest, the frackers have left the forest, the frackers have left the forest, and they're not coming back, and they're not coming back, and they're not coming back.
The frackers have left the forest. The frackers have left the forest. The frackers have left the forest. And we won't let them back. Hooray!
Oh, the beautiful garden.
Maybe, you know, sort of gather in this kind of area, and then I'll kind of go around and harass your neighbours and things like that.
So very good. Wanna walk in the garden. Oh, the beautiful garden. So full of life.
We're against fracking
Yeah.
in principle because it's a risk we don't need to take to produce a gas that we can't afford to burn if we're going to fight climate change. If we hit our decarbonisation targets by 2050, we'll need half as much gas as we currently use in the country today, and the North Sea has enough to produce that at least. But more than that, we found an alternative way to make gas in Britain. Green gas from grass, and we're launching a study in a couple of weeks that shows that there's enough marginal farmland in Britain to make enough green gas to power all the homes in Britain. It's a far safer way to make gas and more sustainable because it will endure forever than fracking is. You know, there's no danger to the countryside, no pollution. It will create habitats for nature as well as sustainable gas, which is truly low carbon, which fracking isn't. So whichever way you look at it, fracking is something we just shouldn't be doing.
And green grass, what is it? Green energy from grass?
Green gas.
Green gas.
Green gas made from grass.
Wow,
Yeah.
tell us more about that, I don't understand.
Yeah, well, green gas is a relatively new thing. We introduced the idea to Britain in about 2010, and we were buying it from abroad at the time, from Holland. But basically, you can make gas through a process of anaerobic digestion, and traditional ways to make it have been through food waste, sometimes animal waste, which is not so nice, and energy crops. And both of those methods have a drawback. We found a kind of middle way, which is to use grass, which you can grow on marginal land. It needs no pesticides and fertilizers, so therefore it creates an organic habitat for wildlife, and it makes better gas and more gas per tonne than the other methods do. So it's a great way to make gas. You can then scrub it up and put it into the grid, and it becomes part of our mains gas.
Wow, and this is the thing you're kind of starting in Tewkesbury?
Yep. We have a planning application. I think the decision is due at the end of September. That will be not our first one. We had one already in Somerset, so we've got 3 in planning at the moment.
Okay, they're going through, so none have been given the go-ahead yet, but they're in. Okay.
Nothing's got the go-ahead yet.
Yeah, but yeah. Cross fingers.
Yeah,
okay,
cross fingers.
Good stuff. All right, thanks for speaking to me.
No trouble.
Yeah, so a great alternative to fracking is green gas. Essentially, we're using grass grown on British farms to produce green gas and fertiliser using anaerobic digestion. We've got our first 2 planning applications in at the moment, and we're hoping to roll this out across Britain. So not only do you get a clean green gas that's made from grass, but you also get a fertiliser that goes back onto the fields and helps not only replenish soils across British agriculture, but also reduces the need for synthetic fertilisers, which we all know do so much damage to our watercourses and contribute so many carbon emissions for the UK.
Yeah, and the good thing about it is that if you put down a new grass lay, it becomes carbon neutral within 2 years. So you're actually holding carbon in the ground. We're actually using the grass there. It's a gas production that actually produces far less emissions than fossil fuels, and actually provides local farmers with an income. Farming in this country is in great difficulty. We all know about the change in the market for milk, and the amount of the dairy herd is almost halved. So there are actually lots of farmers who could benefit from an opportunities like this to produce energy from growing just grass. You have to remember that before the First World War, 30 to 40% of our motive power, our energy, was from grass to feed to horses and cattle. We can go back to that and actually retain the soil, actually produce biodiverse fields, and actually produce all the energy we need for all our houses in this country from our own land.
I moved to the Cotswolds from Bolcombe, which, if anyone remembers, is the place that had the huge anti-fracking protest about 3 years ago.
Very well, Caroline Lucas got arrested there.
Yeah, and my parents still live there. And yeah, I moved here, found out there was like a fracking threat locally, founded Frack Free Five Valleys, and also something called the Toxin Free Network. And it's basically a network of communities that survey themselves to show that there's no social licence for fracking in their area. And invariably it's at least over 75%, it's usually 85% or more of people say that they not just they don't like it, it's that they don't give the social licence for fracking, and they also are behind people peacefully defending their communities. So when communities do this process and actually organise to protect themselves, which is obviously quite an important part of it, then that gives a very strong message to companies that going to those areas to try and frack is going to be a bit of both a PR and a financial nightmare. Because any delays to these companies are one step closer to bankruptcy, because they tend to be small startup companies that things like delays can cause a huge kind of financial problem for. And the head of the company that just left said that said to one of the councillors there that the community feeling was a factor in them leaving.
Coming back to the garden, oh, let me back in the garden. Wanna come back to the garden.